Welcome to 5 Minutes, your quick dive into the wide-ranging world of insurance, technology, and leadership. I'm Miguel Edwards, and I'll be your guide as we explore these topics that are transforming not just the insurance industry, but the business world at large. Along with sharing observations I've made over the span of my career in insurance, technology, and operations, I'll be chatting with some of the brightest minds in business and leadership. Whether you're a seasoned executive or a rising star, an industry expert, or just curious about how technology is revolutionizing insurance, this is your perfect spot for your weekly dose of insights. This is 5 Minutes. Do you have any thoughts on kind of what the obligation is to the client in this whole relationship that seems to be missing?
Unfortunately, and somebody told me this years ago, he said companies hire consultants so they have somebody that they can sue when things go wrong. Which I thought was cynical, but there's an element of truth to that because the uninformed buyer is just trying to transfer their risk, which is okay, but transfer their responsibility, which is not okay. Transfer the risk, sure, bring in the pros, but don't give up your responsibility. You still are going to be accountable for the outcomes from that, whether it's McKinsey or XYZ consultancy out of Bayonne, New Jersey. It doesn't matter. And apologies to XYZ Consulting. I don't know if that exists, but
I have to say that, and I'm thinking of their names as right now as we speak, that there are a number of consultants from the Big Four, that are responsible for great successes in my career. And I'm very, very thankful for the work that they brought to me when I was at large enterprise. But I'd like to say also too, I'd like to think at least that a lot of that had to do with how I managed those relationships and those engagements, taking the accountability,
Absolutely.
Making sure that they knew. And by the way, also too, being able to filter through the difference between the consultants and the salespeople, because they both carry the same business card working for the same company. And there's a difference, and I had to get burned a couple times to be able to tell who was who in that whole thing,
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. There are a couple of elements, Rob, in the book that I'd like to talk about. And by the way, there's another element of this that I want to bring to the fore, because anybody listening to this could easily say, I'm not a career consultant, so this is a wholly inapplicable conversation. And there could be nothing further from the truth, because everything that I read in your book could be applied to any leader in an organization, being an internal consultant, trying to solve problems internally. And one of the things that really kind of stuck out to me is you talk about how, making an analogy to the medical practice, about how there's this notion where you've got these specialists, and they all are responsible for the individual parts of the body. But rarely do those people, and I'm kind of paraphrasing, do they get into a room to talk about how all of these ailments from different parts of the body could be potentially coming from a single root cause. And you say, and you close this paragraph, this is precisely what is happening in our organizations today. What's the call to action there, Rob, just in terms of how we think about breaking down those organizational silos that prevent us from really getting at change, at necessary change in an organization?
That's a cultural phenomenon within an organization that's eminently fixable. In the medical profession, it seems to be more challenging, and maybe it's the same phenomenon. In the medical world, it's called defensive medicine, right? Your primary care physician sees some anomaly, and immediately sends you off to a specialist. That happened to me. And I talk about certain experience in the book. But I don't think I recounted this one. I had a quote unquote anomaly on an EKG. Doctor just sent me to a cardiologist, and I'm panic stricken. Like, what the heck? I have no family history of heart disease. I get to the cardiologist's office. He looks at the old EKG, the one that my primary ran. He reads the EKG. He says, "What are you doing here?" I said, "I don't know. My primary physician told me to come here." He said, "Well, your potassium level's a little low. Eat some bananas and do some yoga." Honest to goodness, that was it. But you run into that all the time. And yeah, with an organ, so there's that defensive medicine. Like, I don't want to be responsible if this is something and you find that in organizations. I don't want to be responsible. And it's, it sets up territorialism. It sets up unhealthy competition within the organization. It sets up all kinds of, not in my backyard, or not invented here syndrome, or that kind of thing.
Thank you for joining this episode of 5 Minutes. If you've enjoyed our discussion, we'd love for you to share it with anyone else you think might find it interesting. Also, please subscribe on whatever podcast platform you're listening on, and hit that bell to stay on top of the game with our practical 5-minute episodes. We look forward to seeing you again next week.